Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Everyday Adventure podcast. Today we're going to be talking about making room for what matters most, and I am so excited for this conversation. I'm also so excited to be here with Megan. How's it going, Megan?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. You just had a fun little trip, but why don't we just, instead of, really rehashing these things, let's kick it off with some celebration and anticipation this week. I know this is something that is important because what we celebrate often gets repeated, and sometimes we just don't pay attention to the good in our life. So give us something that you're celebrating right now, Megan.
Well, I'm celebrating. I just went on a trip this last weekend. I was in Omaha, and my best friend Carly lives there. It's kind of like best case scenario for her wedding. All of her bridesmaids became really good friends afterwards.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so we all went to college together, but we like reconnected as bridesmaids. And so we all hang out all the time now, but she doesn't live in Fargo. And so we were like, well, we should probably like go hang out with Carly.
That's so awesome.
It was so fun. And then we'd all kind of been there as tourists. We've done kind of the classics for her. And so she was like, I'm just going to show you guys my life. And so we went on her favorite date with her and her husband. So we went to their favorite restaurant and went mini golfing afterwards. And
that's awesome.
She actually left for India yesterday. So it's kind of crazy. But so it was like a one last get her house ready, get her packed, like get her sent across the world. It was like a
life hangout, life friend hangout. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I'm celebrating good friends and fun trips and just like a chill weekend, though. It still felt like we weren't going crazy,
Omaha is just one of those places that I've driven through it many times. I've maybe stopped once, but we're going there this summer. So you'll have to give me all the everyday stuff.
Yeah. I'll tell you where to go grocery shopping.
Carly's date.
Yeah. I did think you guys should go mini golfing when you guys were down there. It was just so fun. It's such an easy activity.
We love mini golf. Mini golf is a top Gloucester summer activity. Have you ever been to a Pirates Cove?
No.
All right, shout out Pirates Cove. They're all over in the Midwest. We grew up going to one in the Black Hills, my family and I, and we would literally go to the Black Hills. We'd do all the hiking, but we would probably mini golf 2 to 3 times like per trip we were there. It's just like, I don't know, maybe it's just because Bismarck mini golf is subpar and Fargo mini golf is subpar that Pirates Cove just gets it right, So shout out Pirates Cove.
It's the Midwest golf.
It is. And maybe it's beyond that, but I know it's Midwest. And if there's other great mini golf courses, please let me know. Because as we are gearing up for the summer, we need some recommendations. We went to Brainerd's Pirate Cove last year. And then there's a new mini golf course in like Otter Tail County that is pretty fun. Also pretty expensive, but it's fun.
But worth it. It's an investment.
Worth it. It's an investment into joy. Yep.
Into joy. Okay, what are you anticipating?
Yes, anticipation. I am looking forward to Camp Conquerors. Those of you who don't know, for the last 8 summers, I've gotten to be a part of AO1 Foundation's Camp Conquerors. And so it's kids with medical conditions, past, present, current, that are all walking through difficult things or have walked through difficult things. And then we just try to give them like the best week of their summer. And so we have a ton of fun games, ton of fun activities. I have been the camp pastor for all 8 years. And so that I started as camp director and then slowly lost responsibility, which is kind of nice. But I'm just so looking forward to it. A lot of the kids come back year after year. So we have really strong relationships with many of them. And so just being able to see them grow and help them build on their faith. And so yeah, I've just been spending a lot of time preparing for the messages and just am really excited to kind of spend that time with them. And also many of them come from like unchurched backgrounds or minimal church backgrounds, and so camp is really, we see it as like this really awesome opportunity to sow seeds and pour into them and create opportunity for spiritual encounter where they actually experience God's presence. And we've just seen so much fruit from it. So I'm so pumped. And then the second week I bring my kids and they get to party with me. And so it's just it's one of my favorite things every summer. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I helped pack the trailer last night. And
Nice.
So just seeing all the fun activities and, the blow up costumes and
Mm-hmm.
all the stuff that happens at camp, was like, okay, I think I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready for camp. It's actually the most ready I've ever been.
Wow. Because talking to you earlier today, I would not have said that you're feeling
Well,
very ready.
The thing is, I preached 9 messages in
Mhm.
5 days or whatever, and always like a lot of life is happening at the same time. But in the past, so I've outlined 8 out of the 9 messages, and then I have 4 completely done.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, at this point, I've usually been like, I have an idea of all 8 messages, but I haven't outlined them. I haven't.
5
So,
days before you
right.
leave.
And so then usually it's like I'm working on messages at camp.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how I think if I was a normal camp speaker, it would be different. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always something that I'm taking PTO for, or it's fitting into everything else. And we're going to talk about this in the episode of just making room for it. But it always is a challenge to like on the front end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm there. It's amazing. But what I end up doing is like, oh, I need to finish that message, or I need to finish the presentation for that message, or the cabin outline for it. So there's
Mm-hmm.
just little things while they're in cabin group, I'm just finishing up for the next message, and it
Mm-hmm.
works out great. But this year my goal was I want to get there and not have anything to do but just hang out. And
Right.
so that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
We're on our way there.
Yeah. And last year, like you mentioned, your kids are coming back for the second week. But last year, I was a camp counselor, and it was the first year your kids were there. And I think something came alive in your kids being at camp.
Yeah.
They just embraced every part of it. They had joined cabins. They were a part of cabin time and
For sure.
conversations and all of that. It was so fun to watch them. So what's that like having that shift change a little bit of getting to bring your family along with something that you were doing long before? Well, you started when Kinsley was a baby.
3 weeks old. Yeah. I mean, I think that first year, Taylor and Kinsley came for part of it. It was a train wreck. They left, our room didn't have AC, and it was 95 degrees out, and it was just not the right environment for a newborn.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even though they haven't been super involved in like the at camp, we've tried to get them to camp most years where they at least come for a day. But I think they've always been very involved in the sense of we're very prayerful over camp leading up. They pray over me when I'm getting in the car to leave. I tell them a ton of stories. We have like photo books from previous years at camp, and I take a ton of pictures and videos. So I show them all of those. So they had like a really good understanding. If you were to ask Kinsley, like, what does dad do at camp? Her answer would probably be like, he gets to tell kids about Jesus. And so I think that part, so then bringing them with and having them be a part of it, like they were in the chapel times. And so I think it almost brought more of a reality to this kind of part of dad's life, the ministry side, that they just don't always see. Like they see dad, and I like it that way, but it was a really fun way to see them kind of catch on to a little bit more of like the purpose that our family has and invite them into it. And we've been able to do that more as they get older, obviously. And so I'm really excited again for this year at camp, because they're going to ride with me and we're going to talk about it. I don't know how it's going to all play out with cabins and stuff. You being there last year was a little bit easier on the Kinsley side.
Mm-hmm.
She had a safe person. Like I can jump right there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's sweet. Even just this morning, it wasn't related to camp, but I was walking up the stairs and we just heard Summit talking about how Jesus is in our hearts. And even if that's theologically just a little off, the Holy Spirit lives in us, but it's very good. But he was telling that to Rowan, like he was trying to explain it to Rowan. And I think that doing these things and never willing to trade that, that they're getting what they need and that they're in the right environments. Like I can't just be off doing it for other kids and not my own. And so I think that was, again, this morning was just kind of a funny little moment. We came up and he's like, yeah, I'm telling Rowan about Jesus. And we're like, awesome, buddy. But I think that just kind of reminds me that we can do the right things for the wrong reasons. We can do the right things in the wrong ways and in the wrong times. Pastor Brad, my mentor, used to always say, the right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong thing. And oftentimes that was in relation to relationships. Like me, a freshman, like, I think I'm going to marry her, and he's like, the right thing at the wrong time. And it was always the wrong thing too.
Yeah.
In those circumstances.
He was just nicer about it.
Yeah. But I think that with our time and the way we spend our time and our yeses and the choices that we make, it's really true. Like, the right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong thing. And that's what we're always aware of with camp. But that kind of brings us to today's conversation. And what I wanted to talk about is making room for what matters most. And I think that a number one thing that I've identified in my life and in people's lives as I've talked to them, and we just had Slow Down Saturday, and so we got to have this like carved out space where I could kind of almost interview people and see where they're at and see what's holding them up. And it really confirmed some things. And one of them was that everybody wants to do more of what matters most. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think not anybody listening today is like, I don't want to do anything that I care about. Like, I would like to just keep doing random stuff. And like, we don't realize it in the moment. We don't always sit there on our phones as we're scrolling going like, this isn't what matters most. And that's part of the problem. And so I think it just was a clarifier to me that helping people understand what matters most to them and then figuring out a way to make more room for it is probably like what I would say is a mission statement, or like is a passion for me now, or not now, but like the wording for it is kind of coming together, is just like making room for what matters most. So when you think of that phrase and when you think of this conversation, what kind of comes to your mind?
Well, what comes to my mind is that I am full. I have no room. And so to make room for what matters most, something's got to give. And so, we've kind of talked about that in past episodes, that I overcommit and I overplan, and to the extent that I have no margin in my life to make room for anything else. And so I think this is just really important for me to be like, okay, the things that are filling my time, filling my week, filling my calendar, are they worth it,
Yeah.
And do they matter? Do they move the pin? And so it makes me excited. It also makes me feel like I need to cancel probably several things or reschedule or something. But I think it's so true. I think that life passes us by if we don't take the opportunity to pause sometimes. And just like this spring, I've spent a lot more time with my family and just realizing that they're all getting older, and like, it matters to me. It matters most to me that even living 4 hours away, I make the time to go home. And so, but the intentionality behind that is that I have to put it in my calendar, because otherwise weeks get filled and I'll miss it. And so, yeah, that's just what I've been thinking about lately, is like, okay, what are the big things that I want to make sure happen, and then let margin fill in with all the other things.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, this kind of comes in a few different parts for me. It's what matters the most, and then what is getting in the way, because I think we spend a lot of time doing good things, but we don't make the room for the great things or the better things in our life. And I've been there so many times in my life where it's just like, man, I even if it's like ministry activities or if it's friends that I'm spending time with, and like there's people in my life, and it's like, but I'm not making room for the relationships that are most important. I'm not making room for the activity or the ministry expressions that I feel most called to or most convicted in. And so I think there's different levels to it too, of just like, how do I do that? But I think the first thing we have to do is kind of identify and help people identify like what does matter most. And so for you, like you've said your family right now or is something. How did you get to that point? Or like, how do you kind of determine in any given season or any given time period what is most important or more important?
Well, I think for me, I wasn't always this way. Like I love my family. I don't know if I always like was so hyper focused on them. But honestly, I think one of the biggest things that's changed, or probably several things, but is just the fact that life is changing constantly for my family right now. I have 6 siblings, and they are all engaged, married, or have kids at this moment, and like it just feels like every year something changes and something's shifting. And so I think for me, making room for them was with the idea that if we're not intentional, we're all going to go our separate ways because life's getting really full. And so, and then just the other part of it was just praying for them. And I don't live by the majority of my family. And so a lot of the best ways that I can love them is to pray for them and is to ask them how I can pray for them. But I can't show up to the soccer games or the t-ball or every family dinner that they're doing on a weeknight. Like I can't do that, but I can call them and FaceTime them and figure out ways to love them from afar. And I think I've shifted my perspective to one. Originally, I've seen that as a burden and now see it as an opportunity, and that there really is a very unique way that I can be intentional with them that I maybe wouldn't if I lived there.
Right.
And took it maybe for granted. I'm not saying that I would, but I think I probably might if I lived down the street. I'd be like, oh, well, I can be less intentional because the convenience is there. So
Yeah. Well, I think you went through a process though, and I think that's the thing that most of us don't realize is that we just don't stop long enough to actually ask ourselves like what matters most, and actually make the space in our schedules to one just say, okay, what is most important right now, and am I doing things that reflect that? And there's a kind of an old saying of your schedule will reveal your priorities. And I think that's so true, is that when I look at my own schedule and like, does it reflect my priorities? Something that I started doing a few years ago was actually, instead of, and this is just maybe a me thing, but it's very easy to schedule the work things, like if I have a one-on-one meeting or a meeting itself or a project, I'll actually carve out time to work on that project. But when it comes to my devotional life, my just time with the Lord, when it comes to my time with my wife, when it comes to my time with my family, those are usually, the way I treat them is typically, those are just kind of automatic. Those are going to happen.
mm-hmm.
It almost feels weird to schedule time. Well, a few years ago, I started scheduling like those times on my calendar. So it was like, so I have time on my calendar that's like kid time or family time or Taylor time, and so I actually have that on there so that I am much better at reminding myself and actually choosing that over that, because there's just so many opportunities when those aren't there
Mm-hmm.
that something else takes the place. And do you know about like the tyranny of the urgent?
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand that like
Yeah.
concept? Because I think that comes from, I think it's Stephen Covey, but there's the 4 quadrants,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the urgent, the important, and then it kind of goes from there. And we spend so much time in the urgent place. We
Mm-hmm.
spend so much time putting out fires. We spend so much time doing the things that come up in the moment. And so when I look at even some of the people that I'm spending time with during the week, it's to no fault but my own, but sometimes it's people that will reach out to me, and because I haven't put the ones that I should be putting in them, there's people that I'm responsible for in different ways, or there's people that I am committed to in certain ways that I kind of take for granted, and I just kind of think I'll just put them on eventually. Your brother's a great instance of this. We did monthly lunches when jobs changed and all that stuff. Like, we didn't guard that, and then it just like something would take it for one of us.
Mm-hmm.
We would get to that Thursday and we would kind of shoot the text, and it would be like, yeah, I don't know if this week's going to work, or it's not because I don't value him. It's not because I don't think he's important, but other things crowded that out. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized that in my life, that I allow that to happen so much. And so what are some of the things that either crowd you out or that can easily crowd people out when it comes to the things that kind of choke out what matters most in our life.
Well, one, shout out Pastor Brad again, because he sat me down and he was like, Megan, it's time to get a paper calendar and just get back into it. Because when you have to write it out and like you can't just easily go to your phone and make the commitment right away, like it takes a little bit more discernment to be like, oh, okay, do I actually want to write that in and make sure that like fits in my schedule, and then you can see your whole week. Anyway, he was getting me on that like a couple months ago. He was like, it's time. He's like, this is how I've done this for 30 years, is that I have to look at a paper calendar and be like, oh, I have a lot of commitments this week. So anyway, that just made me think of that. But I think what crowds what?
I mean, it would work the same if he tried a digital calendar. Brad's famous line is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And so, of course, he's going to use... I actually use... You know this about me. Like, I like analog. I like paper. But I also put it on digital because otherwise I will...
Well, here's the thing. If I have it... So I made the switch, and I used to live by my phone calendar.
Yeah.
But the switch happened in the sense that I couldn't... Maybe this is a people pleaser. I'm getting deeper into how I'm wired, maybe. But, like, someone would ask me if I'm free in person. They'd be like, are you free Tuesday, whatever. And before, because it's on my calendar, it's in my back pocket, and I would look and I'd be like, well, yes. And you know I'm free. And so now I'm locked in.
Yeah.
But a paper calendar was like, actually, let me look at my planner when I get home. I'll let you know. So it was like this, it removed me for a second to like pause and be like, do I actually want to do that?
Yeah.
Is this the best use of my time? And then commit or not commit later. This is
great.
a tangent.
I get that. No, I fully understand. I feel like you walked us into something that's very important though, and that's because there are the external things that crowd out what's most important, and then there's the internal things. Like there's the external things. Like there is the work meetings that get scheduled. There is the we just this week, we got the schedule for baseball, summits in baseball and soccer, and soccer's supposed to be spring, but it gets extended because of bad weather, and summer is baseball. Well, there's some overlap, and we just realized that the days for practicing games are literally the same days. And so now we're overbooked, and we have to make decisions and help him make decisions about, which one does he want to do and all that stuff. And it's not very fun to put a 6-year-old in that place where he can't do both, And so I would say sometimes it's external. We didn't have a ton of control in that. Like when we signed him up for baseball, we just didn't know what week it was, but we wanted him to play that. And in reality, it was only supposed to be like a week or two of overlap. Now it's like 4. But then there's the internal stuff, and that's the, people pleasing, or there's these other things that are inside of us. I think people pleasing is a huge one. I think there's insecurities, or there's that idea of even like FOMO, which isn't necessarily people pleasing as much as internally, like I don't want to miss out on things. I don't want to not be in the room. I don't want to miss the conversation. I don't want to be left behind. I think there's I've been in that place in relationships where it's like people are doing something and I don't really want to do it. And it's not like bad or sinful. It's just like I would rather spend time doing something else. But I know that they're going to talk about it for the next 2 weeks if if I'm not there, and their friendships are going to step forward and mine's going to fall back. And I used to really struggle with that of like, okay, I'll just go because I need to make the appearance. And that's how I felt like my friendships were for like 5 years before we made the move out to the East Coast. Was like, I felt like I was making appearances in my relationships instead of like abiding in them and living in them. And so I think there's a lot of those internal things that really crowd out what matters most. Do you have anything to add to that?
Do you have anything else to confess?
Yeah, do you have confession time? We need a partition between us.
No, I think that for me, something that crowds, and this is just the nature of my job, but my job is I work in events too. So it's a lot of evenings or outside of a normal work it can become that. And if I don't guard something else to like flex that time, sometimes I'll just like overwork. And I think there's a lot that can cause that, you know, either you just actually have a lot to do, but also you could just be like, no, I want to be seen as someone that's a really hard worker or something like that. I want to make sure that, you know, it gets all the way across the finish line. That's usually what I get caught up in. And so then that can crowd out intentional time I would normally spend with people or doing something else.
Right.
And so it's just like the nature of a job sometimes is, or how you approach your job is with like a hyperfixation to it that, or a need for perfectionism to give it all of your time. And then but with that, I think what I can fall into then is like, not balancing it. And so I can never remember this, and you might be able to remember the saying, but it's like divert daily something and get away once a year. So it's like do something once a day to get out of your routine, to go take some time with Jesus or for yourself, do something weekly, so like a Sabbath, and then do something annually. But it's like a nice saying.
Yeah,
you know?
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember it though.
But I can't either. Anyway, I think I do that every time I try to explain it. I'm like, I can't remember. I should just look it up. But I think that even guarding that, like not letting that get overcrowded, just your day to day, and figure out a way, you know, if you're working late or you have plans that evening, don't make plans in the morning. And usually that's what I get caught up in, is I make plans on both sides because I'm like, oh, I'd rather just get it all done in one day.
Right. It's divert daily, withdraw weekly, and abandon annually.
Yeah. So doesn't that sound nice?
It does sound nice. I liked yours too, but I think that is really good though, the work side of things too, because again, that's important of knowing the first step in all of this is where we are now. Like that first pin is, this is where I'm at. Today we're a little bit more talking about the second pin of true north, of where we're going and what matters most. But without knowing who we are and where we are, we go into these work environments and we go into relationships not realizing the weight of what we carry, you know, just in the sense of what you were saying about work. You are, you know, perfectionist. You are on that 1 on the Enneagram, and so like that's a really good trait. It's positive. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, but if I'm not aware of that, something will happen. My passion will get in the way of actually productivity and of good things. And so for me, even in the work environment, I can kind of put my head down and do and create and do all that, but I need to make space and remember the relational side of it too. And so I have to define that, like, this is part of the job, because that's where I would get in trouble in ministry sometimes, is that like I needed to write more content, or I needed to prepare a sermon, or I needed to build a system, or, you know, onboard people. Like there's a lot of tasks that happen in ministry, but I had to remind myself that like developing people and discipling people and training people is a part of my job. It's not like the second part, it's a core part of it. And that I think speaks to that same thing though. But again, it deals with how we do things. You know, it's not just what we do, but how we do them. And I think a big part of this whole idea of making room for what matters most is actually creating space in our lives and margin in our lives so that we can say yes to what's better, you know? And I think this is going to stink, but sometimes that means we have to say no. And sometimes that means we have to actually, and I'm not talking about being flaky. I'm not talking about backing out on friends and backing out on people. But sometimes we have to cancel a plan. Sometimes we have to stop doing something that we were doing. What I would say is, don't ghost people. Don't ever just like not show up or send a text 2 minutes before saying, sorry, I can't come to coffee this morning. You know, I would rather, and something that I have done is like have really difficult conversations. This happened with a friend a while ago. I just wasn't able to be the type of friend that this person wanted. And my initial instinct was to kind of disappear, and not respond or whatever. But it led to eventually having to have a really awkward, hard conversation just about, this is what I can give, this is what I can't give. And it was received well. It was still awkward and tense, but I think I've realized that every time I've done that, I am aligning with conviction. I'm aligning with what is best in my life. And it wasn't that this person wasn't important. It was just that I wasn't able to, and my people pleasing self would have said yes and then been miserable and unhappy and regretting because there were other things that I should have been prioritizing. And then my other negative side is the ghosting side. It's just like, well, I'm just going to act like it doesn't exist, but it does. And so I think that is why is that challenging for you? Because I think there will be people that relate to you.
Oh, gosh, I've become the target audience. Sorry.
Just like the difficulty. I know we've talked about this a little bit, but like the saying no part, because again, I think this is the hardest part that people need to hear, is that maybe it's not you have to say no to things you've already said yes to, but you have to stop saying yes to those things
right.
Moving forward. So it might not be like cancel everything. For some, that might be an extent. I know I wrote about this in Everyday Adventure, and we've talked about it before, but COVID was that for me. COVID was an immediate stop. Like, we weren't able to do camp. We weren't able to do the meetings. We had interns planned. I couldn't build an internship program. Like, there's so many things that were actually like, it was an immediate slowdown. And then I've since then realized, like, I need to recreate that. I need to create, not COVID.
Right.
I need to go into my lab,
Jeez.
I need to go in and really get real with myself and say, like, no, I need to, the same slowdown that happened when everything was shut down and there's so many things pulled from my calendar, I need to routinely go through my life and double check to make sure everything that's there is supposed to be there. But that's hard. And I think that's the hard thing to hear, is like, I don't think you can make room for what matters most. I don't think you can spend your life doing the things that matter most unless you confront this, and unless you I'm not trying to speak down on you right now, Megan. I just think, don't you agree though?
Don't you agree you should be better?
No, I'm not saying that. That's not.
No, I know. Yes, I agree. I think I agree. Everything you're saying is good. I think, speaking for if anyone's single too that's listening to this, I think this is such a trap for us, especially because we don't have a natural good excuse of, like, I have a family waiting for me at home, or I have plans with the family or something. Like, our family is our community. That is how it is. And that's really healthy for the most part.
Right.
But I think it causes a lot of overcommitment because you want to be around people because you don't have that naturally built in. And so I think, and also I think that there is maybe a little bit of a tie. I've talked about this with so many people, more so recently, that, like, sometimes when you're single, there's like this expectation of, like, well, you can serve, you can give, you can stay late, you can do this, whatever. You can come early and do this, because there's an assumption that you don't have other things going on. And so anyway, I think that's maybe what has happened for me, is like that my community is my people. And so when they have baby showers, when they have weddings, like, I show up and I'm there. But at the same time, I think that it's a realization of, like, I think I have a hard time, like, saying no to, like, a wedding or, like, a baby shower, because I'm like, this is, like, I made the list. Like, for some reason you want me there, and that's exciting, but at the same time I'm like, you're not my core circle. So how do you define that? I guess maybe I'm asking that, like, how do you make room for the relationships and, like, the right relationships, instead of just every relationship?
I mean, I really do think that the unfortunate reality of being a human is that we have limitations and
Mm-hmm.
that we will disappoint people. That there will be people that just, because this is what we do, is that, and I've done it, so I'm not saying like you're the only one, or like I
Mm-hmm.
think we all do
Yeah.
this, is that because we get to this point and it's like it becomes really hard to choose people. And it brings me back to MySpace when we rated friends. This is pre you, but MySpace, one of the
What were you doing in
biggest
the dark ages?
one of the biggest like features of MySpace that made it unique to other social media platforms that exist today is that you could rate your friends publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And we would shift
It's
each
just
other
so
around.
bad.
And like bad lunch, you're going down. And the thing with that was, though, this is going to sound crazy, but there is a little bit of health to it, even if it stays private.
Right.
But that is true. Like there are people that are more important to me than other people. And when I fail to admit that, I am only failing myself. Like I am only robbing myself of my relationship like health and other people's relational health, because I'm not giving to Ryan what I want to give to Ryan right now. I'm giving what Ryan deserves to other people. And I think this is where I've had to try to like get brutally honest with myself on this, is because when I picture it in that way, so this wedding, a wedding that, and I was offered to do a wedding in August, and this was a long time ago. Great people, love them. But my role was changing. I was no longer a pastor at the church. Part of my role at the church was officiating weddings. So there was a little less like pick and choose. Well, this new season, I'm still a pastor, but I'm not on staff for the church. And I was asked to do a wedding, and I like had this battle of like, do I just say yes? Do I just say yes? Do I just say yes? But I realized like we're in a new season. I have a few weddings that I think that people will ask me to officiate, and they did. I want to make sure I have space. And that weekend in August is now something that I wouldn't have had the space to say yes to. That is way more important. And that might sound harsh if that person's listening. I'm not saying that you're not important. What I'm saying is that I have to be able to define those things. And if I can't define them, I'm robbing myself and I'm robbing other people. And even in that situation, am I going to be in my best if I'm not where I'm supposed to be because of that? And here's the reality is that's where I would be if I had said yes to it, because I'm not going to tell them like, hey, I can't do your wedding because this family thing came up. Like I won't do that. I can't do that. But that's the position I would have put them in. That's the position I would have put myself in. And so I think I totally understand what you're saying, because I've totally experienced this for a majority of my life, is that without defining it, because if everything's important, nothing's important.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to sound harsh, but if everybody is important, nobody's important. And I think that's why actually sitting down to really define those relationships and define who do I need to make the most space for, it's what allows us to do that. So then the weddings come up, like Taylor and I, we try to do something that recognizes the couple, that, that shows that we love them, shows that we care. But that doesn't always mean we show up in person. And what we've known too from being married is that I don't remember who's at my wedding. I couldn't tell you. I could find the guest book maybe.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that I'm not grateful for those that were. It's just that it's a big day. It's a fast-paced day. So the weddings that I want to be at are the ones that would for sure remember, and that would be like a family member, and her best friend,
Yeah. So this kind of makes me think of, which I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast yet, but like making core values for yourself and for your life, because I was just thinking as you were talking about, like, okay, how do we figure out what is most important? Like, how do you actually define that? Because I'm still sitting here being like, okay, but still, like, these things are important. I'm thinking about my summer schedule, and I'm like, there's nothing that I want to give up right now. It's all good. And so how do you define what's best and what deserves to have room made for it, you know?
This is a future conversation.
Amazing.
And honestly, I didn't get to tell you this, but this is also our next workshop.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to attend. I'm not helping plan it this
Okay,
time.
perfect. No, I really do think, like, that's what I was thinking about leaving the event, was like, all of it was great. We had the best time at Slowdown Saturday, but I think people still struggle to define that. And I still struggle to define that. You still struggle to define that. And so we do need to be able to label those things. We do need to be able to give names to those things. And again, like, the hardest part of this is being a nice guy. One of the most disappointing things, I tell the story of when I was like in elementary school and our teacher gave everybody superlatives and Ben Grassel got funniest in the class. I was really disappointed there. The other one was in high school. I wasn't named the nicest kid. And I was really bummed. Like, oh, I'm super nice, you know? But that's the thing, is like, it's not about, I don't know. Somebody said it, like, Christianity is not about being nice. It's about following Jesus. It's about being obedient. It's about doing the right things. And I think, again, to go back even another layer here, it's that when I'm talking about doing what matters most, it's not always necessarily what matters most to me. It's also what matters most to God. It's what is aligned with my calling, aligned with my purpose, aligned with my convictions. And obviously, as a father, as a husband, like, that defines 4 immediately that are more important than anybody else. So like you were saying, in singleness, it's not always as defined. And so, but I think the same principle applies of, like, I still, as a human being, have limited bandwidth capacity. And so I think the next question in all of this is, okay, if I am choosing tasks and people that are more important than other things, how do I handle the other parts of it? And I think that's another whole part of this conversation that we can continue having, because I don't think it means being, harmful towards them, neglecting towards them, mean towards them. It's just, when I got married, every other female no longer had a similar path
Right.
in relationship. I know, and like, that's a silly example, but it's the same with other areas of our lives, that, like, okay, no longer do I have the same bandwidth to invest in this or that. So I think we set up a great ongoing conversation here.
Oh gosh.
No, I really appreciate you being willing to jump into it, though. For those of you who don't know, Megan and I did not plan this conversation.
What gave it away?
This one was one that we sat down and we said, all right, let's go.
Yeah. That was good. I do think that, like, I think this is a very relatable conversation to a lot of people. And just, like, the conversations that I'm in is talking about this idea of, like, we're overcommitted and everything feels important. Everyone feels important. And I think that only becomes more so, even, like, if you talk about the, like, people that are recently married, like, a lot of what they navigate is dynamics of relationships change, because you're no longer tier 1 in their family. Right. And that's okay, but it does take some figuring out then, how do you create space that's meaningful for people but also reflects what's most important.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I don't want to act as if I've figured all this out and get it all right. You
don't know everything.
I don't know everything. And I will say, though, that doing this for the last 5+ years has taught me a lot, though. Like, in the sense of, again, 5 years ago, I was a mess when it came to, like, priorities. I was a mess when it came to my yeses and my nos. And I still struggle with yeses when it comes to, like, work, because I enjoy working. I'm in a really fun spot where other friends that do awesome things ask me to do things with them, and it's really fun. And I really enjoy that, but I have to be really careful too. And, like, we're in a phase, like, even with camp, camp feels like one of the last things I would want to part ways with in the sense, but we were talking the other night and we're like, do we need to at least start having that conversation a little bit more in depth? Because it used to just be I was taking a week or two away from being with my family, and we figured out a way to bridge that gap. They come for a week, I go home between camps, all that stuff. But we felt really good about that, and we still do, in the sense of there are going to be things that pull us away for a moment of time, especially when we are following Jesus and we say yes to him. And I firmly believe that, like, there's kids that are experiencing Jesus because of my family's willing to sacrifice that time with me. And, but on the other hand, now our kids are starting sports. And so now it's not just, now they're just missing me for a couple weeks, but now they're also missing their activities. And so are we willing to do that? So we're just having this whole new conversation of like, how many activities is too many? How do we do this? And so again, though, that does really stem from values and what we value and really defining that. And so more to come on this conversation. To be continued.
Yeah. Well, okay. Give us the challenge around this, though. Like, how can we step into this week?
Yeah, we are going to do Quit Something Thursday. I think this is a Bob Goff challenge. This is something that he does every Thursday. He says he quit something. And so that's what we're going to do this week. We're going to quit something this week. And again, do it the right way. It might be preemptively quitting. It might not be not showing up at something. I had a rule in my family, like we couldn't quit a sport once it was in season. So I'm still for that. But there might be something, a responsibility, something that we are currently committed to, involved in, that whether it's we need to have the hard conversation, but to have the conversation the right way, have the conversation in the right timing, give the right time if there needs to be. Like, I'm not saying show up at your job to be like, I'm done, but there's something that might need to happen, and I want to do it in an honoring way, a respectful way, a kind way, a loving way, a way that leaves room for relationship in all areas of life. But we need to quit something this week.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, it's not always quitting an obligation that you put in. Sometimes it's quitting hitting snooze, get up and make room in your morning for a good morning routine. Like, there's other things. There's quit scrolling on social media, or quit social media for a time, whatever that is. So
good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for hanging out, Megan.
I'm so happy to be here.
Such an early morning to be diving into your depths today. But
amazing.
So glad that you're listening. If you don't already, subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to catch you next time. Make sure you get all the notifications of when episodes are coming out. And we can't wait to see you next time here on the Everyday Adventure Podcast.
See ya.